So imagine you walk into a room full of people, and some of them everyone seems drawn to, and others fade into the background. What makes a difference? Well, scientists have actually studied this, and they found specific behaviors that make people instantly more likable. And today I'll share 7 techniques that are very subtle, but have made an incredible difference in my life in how I respond to people. So let's first talk about high-value warmth and non-needy reciprocity. So scientists found that one factor matters more than all others. We like people who like us, meaning signaling to others that you are friendly by smiling and making friendly comments is the fastest way to get someone to like you back. The scientific term for this is called reciprocity. The problem? It always tends to be a bit awkward and nervous to meet new people, and we tend to freeze up, our face stiffens, we get so focused on ourselves, what are they thinking about me, that we forget to show any warmth at all. And people interpret this as a dislike, so they mirror it back, and now we created a cycle of disconnection. So we want to change our mindsets when we meet people. Instead of thinking, what will they think of me? Shift to, how can I communicate to this person that I like them? And we'll talk much more about the specifics of how to do this later, but some overdo it, so they become needy instead. So they go, hi, wow, I love your shoes, and your t-shirt is so cool too. And then they put on a huge smile, but the smile is a little bit nervous, so they seem anxious instead. And this has the opposite effect of what we're trying to achieve here. And this leads us to the next finding, which is super crucial to make this first finding work, and that is energy calibration. So this might be the most overlooked part of likability, matching energy levels. So the second most important factor for likability is that we match the energy level of the person we're talking to. So when I talked about showing warmth before, we want to do it at an energy level that matches the person we're talking to. For example, are you usually the loud, talkative one? Well, practice dialing it back. Or if you're naturally quiet, you want to push yourself to contribute more. And this can be obviously hard to quantify. So you can think, how many words per minute is this person talking? And am I talking faster than they, or am I slower? So if I'm talking at this pace, and then the other person is talking like this, I'm just not going to come off as likable to that person because I'm just too energetic. They're going to think, well, I'm just not as intense as this person. And there's a disconnect and there's a dislike. So people unconsciously connect with those who share their energy level. And I'm naturally high energy, so in my mind, I have to do what I call a chess clock. When I notice I've been talking too much, I consciously step back and create space. Now, many of our members in our community practice the opposite. When they do speak, they elaborate more instead of giving one-word answers. So how do you get this balance right? Well, that leads us to the dribble and pass. So researchers studied thousands of conversations to figure out which type makes people like each other fastest. And there was one clear winner. And most of us are doing the exact opposite. They call it the back and forth conversation. It's exactly what it sounds like. The conversation flows equally between both people, like a tennis match. No one dominates, no one disappears. Now, we're told that people only want to talk about themselves. So if you want to get someone to like you, you're supposed to get them talking. But here's what surprised the researchers. Unbalanced conversations where one person talks way more than the other actually makes people like each other less. Even if the quiet person chooses to be quiet, even if the talkative person was entertaining, the imbalance itself creates this connection. Most people fall into one of two traps when someone asks them a question. Trap number 1, the overtalker. They get so excited, so they talk most of the conversation. And trap number 2, the deflector. They're so worried about being boring that they give 1 or 2 word answers and then immediately throw the question back. So, how was your weekend? Good. How was yours? And they go, oh, that was so good, because you're supposed to ask questions. People only want to talk about themselves. That's wrong. So both create the same problem. No real connection happens. And here at Social Self, we teach them something we call the dribble and pass. So think of it like a conversation with a basketball. And when you get the ball, you don't immediately shoot it or pass it away. You dribble first, and then you move forward. You add something to the game, and then you pass. And in conversation, that means someone asks about your weekend, and you share something specific. So you dribble. Well, it was pretty good actually. I finally tried that new coffee place downtown. And then you pass. Have you been there yet? But here's the key. When they answer, You don't just wait for your turn to talk again, you catch their pass by actually responding to what they say. And maybe they mentioned they're not a coffee person, you reflect on that. Oh, you're more of a tea person, or you're just not into caffeine at all. This creates a rhythm, and you notice how you explore the conversation topic together by dribbling and passing together, just like you move across the court. So you share a bit, you pass it over, you respond to what they say, you add your own thoughts, back and forth, equal exchange. The researchers found that this pattern consistently creates the most liking, more than any other conversation style. And it's not about being interesting or funny or smart, it's about creating balance. So the next time you're in the conversation, picture that basketball. Are you hogging it? Are you passing it way too quickly? Are you creating that perfect rhythm that makes people genuinely enjoy talking to you? Okay, 3, smiling is overrated. Everyone says that we should smile more, but what if that makes us less likable? Another surprising finding from research is that smiling can actually make us seem nervous. The reason is that nervous people tend to hide their anxious facial expressions with a constant smile. It's so common that we subconsciously see a constant smile as being nervous. So what do truly likable people do? Well, they smile for sure when they have a reason for smiling. And this is when they greet someone, and when they say goodbye, and when something funny happens. But except for that, you don't want to frown. So you relax your face and make sure that you don't furrow your brows, because a tense face like this looks angry, and that's highly unlikable. 4, understand signals and when someone pings you. Here's something that completely changed conversations for me. When someone asks, how was your weekend? They don't actually care about your weekend, but something much more important is happening. When they ask about your weekend, what they're really saying is, I'm friendly and I'm open to connecting, or you. And this is a big deal because I thought they wanted to make useless small talk about my weekend, but I completely missed that that wasn't what it was about. No, they were trying to connect with me. So think of a small talk like pinging a satellite. You send a signal to see if it's working, and the actual data doesn't matter. What matters is getting a signal back. So when people make small talk, think, they signal that they want to interact and want to know I'm friendly. So what's the scientifically most optimal way to respond to this ping? By appropriately responding to the ping and making sure we're not under-responding, which leads us to 4, properly responding to a ping. So there's a psychologist named John Gottman, and he was the one who originally realized that we constantly send out these pings, and he called them bids for connection. A smile, a good morning, offering to help with something. We do this constantly without even realizing it. These are all bids or pings, tiny attempts to connect with another person. And here's what I realized. When someone responds to your bid, you feel slightly closer to them. And when they don't, it creates a tiny rift. So you smile at someone and they look away, or you say nice weather today and you just get silence or a nod. Each ignored bid is like a tiny rejection. So we might not consciously notice, but the brain actually keeps score. It's kind of fascinating. So not only that, likable people respond the appropriate amount. So if you say nice weather today and get silence, that's a big rift. If the other person just says, yeah, it's not as painful, but it definitely doesn't make you like them more, right? But if they say, yeah, it's so nice, I'm going to go to the park later and do some reading. What are your plans? Then they fully responded to your bid and you just like them a little bit more. But if they under-respond, the damage adds up. Under-respond to enough bids and people stop trying to connect with you. They unconsciously start to dislike you, even if they can't explain why. And this explains why some are just so likable, but we just can't put the finger on it. Every time you ping them, you get a good signal back. All right, affirmations are better than praise. So, common advice is that people will like you more if you give them lots of praise. But praise is so overused today that it feels superficial. The problem with praise is that people who give it often come off as insincere. They go, love your outfit, great job, you're awesome. And you realize, oh, they don't mean any of this. The other reason is that it's hard for people to receive praise. If you tell them that they did something great, they might start wondering if you only said that to be nice. It's better to affirm. So for example, if you talked to someone yesterday, you can refer back to something they said today. Hey, it was really interesting what you said about color theory yesterday. It made me think about da-da-da. Notice that it doesn't come off as flattery even. You're just saying it in passing, but you're acknowledging that you remember what they say, which affirms them. And because you did it in passing, they didn't even have to respond to it. You're also showing them that you agreed and even liked what they said. But this has none of the bitter aftertaste that praise has. Or someone says something that you thought was smart, and then you just say, oh, that's smart. Now this is a way to cheer them on, just as a matter-of-fact observation. So rather than thinking, how can I praise this person, think, how can I help this person feel affirmed? How can I show them they're making good choices and decisions? Obviously, you only want to affirm someone whose decisions you truly agree with, or it would obviously be manipulative. Here's another example. If I told you right now, thank you so much for watching this video, you're the best, that feels empty, right? Or what if I said this? I can see in my analytics that 90% of viewers click away in the first minute or so, but you're still here, past the 4-minute mark, which shows that you're more motivated than the average viewer. And that makes me happy because you're part of the audience that I make these videos for. The second one hits different, right? Because it's specific to you and what you're doing right now, okay? Okay, so far we talked about other people, but likable people are also good at sharing about themselves, which leads us to selective self-disclosure. So it turns out that people who seem perfect are actually less likable than those who show some type of vulnerability. And they studied this a lot, and again they see that when someone comes across as having zero weaknesses, we tend to dislike them more, not less. And this goes against what most people believe. We spend so much energy trying to hide our imperfections, thinking that it'll make people like us more, but it actually pushes them away. Okay, so what works? Well, it's something psychologists call selective self-disclosure. Think of it like an iceberg. You want to show people what's just beneath the surface, maybe just 1 or 2 feet underwater, but not what's at the very bottom. So let me show you what that looks like in a real conversation. So say that you're in a group talking about movies. Instead of just listing your favorite movies, you could mention something slightly vulnerable. Like, I actually love true crime documentaries, but I can't handle like real horror movies because I just get so genuinely scared. See what happened there? You shared something real about yourself without oversharing, and that made you more likable because it makes you more human. But self-disclosure doesn't have to be about weaknesses. It could be anything that is just slightly personal, slightly below the surface. Like if I told you about my rabbit I had when I was a kid that I wrote poems to, notice how that makes me a bit more human than just some random YouTuber, right? So think of it this way. If sharing nothing personal keeps you at arm's length and oversharing makes people uncomfortable, selective self-disclosure hits that sweet spot in between. So why is it so powerful to share something below the surface? Well, because now you know something about me that not everyone else knows, and that creates a connection, right? So the next time you're in a conversation, try this. Share one small thing that shows that you're human, not your deepest secret, not your biggest failures, just something that lets people see you're real. Okay, let's move on to one of the most common mistakes that I see, and that is to not always agree. And we call this acceptance signaling. Okay, so what happens when we try to connect with someone? We tend to agree about everything, right? We nod along and we keep our opinions to ourselves. But instead of making people like us more, it actually pushes them away. When you never share your real opinions, people can't figure you out. They don't know what you stand for, and that makes them uncomfortable. It's like talking to someone wearing a mask. You can't connect with them because you don't know who they really are, right? So likable people don't hide what they believe in, but somehow they just stay as likable. And first, that doesn't make sense, right? We're told that to be liked, we should find common ground and agree with people and avoid conflict. And that's true too. We want to focus on the common ground. But these people, they're also able to disagree. And they share completely different opinions, and the other person would actually lean in closer and be more engaged than before. And think about it, when someone says, for example, electronic music is just noise. Imagine someone says that, and you love electronic music, so you get really defensive, right? Well, you don't actually get upset because they have a different taste. That's not the main issue. you get upset because you feel that something is wrong with you for liking it, like they are making it look that way, right? So you feel like you have to defend yourself, and then we end up in an argument. So here's another way to say it. Arguments do not happen because people have different opinions. They happen because people feel attacked and need to defend themselves. Okay. But highly likable people have figured out what we here at Sources have called acceptance signaling. They share their different opinions in a way that signals your view makes total sense at the same time. So if someone tells you that they love electronic music, instead of pretending to love it too, you might say, you know, I never really grew up around electronic music, so I don't have that same emotional connection to it. I mainly listen to rap, but I do like Massive Attack, and they merge rap and electronic music really well. Okay, do you see what's happening there? You're not saying that electronic music is bad, you're saying you didn't grow up with it. And that's just a fact about your life. And then you show you can appreciate it in your own way by mentioning Massive Attack. The person doesn't feel defensive because there's nothing to defend against. You already accepted their view as valid. So let's look at something more intense. Let's say that you are religious, but your friend isn't. So you could say, I had some personal experiences where I truly felt like there was something out there. So I do believe in God. But reading the Bible, there are so many counterintuitive stories, I don't think anyone should be blamed for choosing not to believe. You see, you're being completely honest about believing in God, but you're also signaling not believing is equally valid. So the other person relaxes, then there's no battle to fight. And this is the fascinating thing about truly likable people. They don't hide who they are. They don't pretend to agree with everything. Instead, they're mastering showing that two different views can exist without either being wrong. So when you signal acceptance like this, something shifts in the conversation. The other person stops defending and starts sharing. They tell you more about why they love electronic music or why they don't believe in God. And the conversation goes deeper because it's safe to be different. Most people think being likable means being agreeable, but it's actually about making others feel accepted for who they are, even when you're nothing alike, especially when you're nothing alike. If you're serious about improving your people skills and are tired of generic advice like just be yourself, that sounds good but makes things more confusing, join our training on the link below where I go much deeper into what I talked about here.